We are on the lunch break in the second day of questioning of Hn58, the former Detective Chief Inspector of the Special Demonstration Squad between 1997 and 2001. He has been questioned further about the deployment of Hn81, cover name Dave Hagan, who was reporting on the Stephen Lawrence campaign around the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. We have seen more of his reports. We've also seen a longer report by Bob Lambert on left-wing extremism in the Stephen Lawrence campaign, which Hn58 had to agree was full of exaggeration, understating the agency of the Lawrence family, hyperbole about the extent of left-wing involvement, claiming that the SDS intelligence was of greater use than it actually was, and also a much longer report which was passed on to the commissioner of the Met on the same topic. On it, there was a handwritten note by Colin Black, the Chief Superintendent of Special Branch, which referred to the focal crisis point in policing in reference to the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. The report claimed that the black community had been politicized by the inquiry. This was something which Hn58 said he agreed with. There was a lot that was covered. For the most part, as usual, Hn58 responded saying that he didn't remember, or just agreeing before, when pressed, going back to the same nonsense. Joined by Evelyn Lubbers, the Undercover Research Group. What did you make of it?
Well, it was a lot of repetition, but that is our strategy, I suppose. He came up with more reports on the movement of justice or other groups that protested against the violence of the police. And that's just, the quote that you just mentioned, like that people were radicalized, black people were radicalized by the inquiry. I would say it's the other way around. It's like the inquiry started because the police didn't handle the murder of Stephen Lawrence very well, or not at all.
I mean,
and that is the reason why people, so the entire reason for the inquiry is how people get radicalized.
I mean, it was put, David Barr put that point to Hn58, said the actual reason for the politicization was the mishandling, the treatment, the racism of the Met Police. Hn58 agreed, yet,
which is weird because the entire morning he has been sort of explaining that he never saw any racism. He would recognize it because he was brought up in the right way, but he never saw any jokes, racism, banter, anything. So, either one is true.
but the point is that after he'd agreed with it, within a few moments, he was arguing against the point. And we saw this repeatedly. We were taken through a variety of reports that detailed the political status of the campaigns. I mean, literally going down to speculating on what certain individuals were going to say to the inquiry, the way in which they were engaging with the inquiry process itself. And it was put to Hn58 that this was not reporting on anything related to public demonstration or public disorder. This was purely about political campaigning.
And the reputation.
Which he completely agreed with.
Yeah.
Which he completely agreed with. And then he responded by moments later by saying that the reporting was focused on the potential for public disorder as a result of the movement for justice holding street demonstrations. It's like he doesn't want to directly argue on a specific point. He'll just agree, and then when pushed on it, he comes out with the opposite again.
Yeah, it's like it's weak. It's sort of trying to weasel himself out of it as long as he can, and then if he can't anymore, he'll just agree, and then what what I do find very important is that he's so much still behind the argument that they had to be in all those groups because they were demonstrating on the street. And when people demonstrate on the street, you just never know, and specifically when the issue is racism and most of the protesters are black, you just never know. See my quotation marks here. That is the entire belief that he tries to, that is what he's trying to explain, that it was important that the SDS would infiltrate those groups just to see whether it would go wrong. In the end, of course, that is, even though, like, if stretched, like, you could understand why an officer would think that, but in fact, of course, it's legitimate demonstrations. People have a right to demonstrate. And also, it was just very good bit, like, yeah, but they were militant. And then Barr went like, yeah, but there's different kinds of militants. Like, it's not, militant doesn't immediately mean like smashing police officers' heads in. It's like,
before the last break, there was an intervention by Mitting, and when we came back after that break, we had the response from Hn58. He said that the way that Special Branch worked was that any reporting on any meeting would be reported in full, and with no consideration given to the appropriateness of whether the details were used or not. He accepts that he didn't do anything about it, but neither did any of his senior management. What became very telling about this was that when we saw those reports I mentioned earlier, that longer report that was sent to the Met Commissioner, the detail of who spoke at what meeting from the family justice campaigns was included in that long report. That long report, which was about the focal crisis point in policing in London, the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, and it really kept coming back to that. We also had more questions about that meeting that took place between Bob Lambert, Hn81, and Richard Walton of the Stephen Lawrence response team in Bob Lambert's back garden. This was referred to as an invaluable meeting. And Hn58 was, yes, it was perceived so at the time. It was put to him that he should have prevented that meeting from taking place. He did not accept that at all. For a moment, he said, no, it was an opportunity for the SDS to provide support and assistance to another police department in the execution of their duties. It was exactly what the SDS was for.
Yes, so they were very proud of what they had been doing. But just imagine, we've said this before, that if it would have come out that undercover officers who were spying on black justice campaigns had a meeting with the main officer who was preparing the answer of the Met Police to the Macpherson inquiry, who was going to sort of rule that the Metropolitan Police was institutionally racist. Imagine that meeting had come out. Exactly that would have caused so many riots. People would feel betrayed, and rightly so. So, well, Hn58, head of the SDS at that point, still didn't understand that maybe was not a good idea to have that meeting. And also, another thing I want to say is, like, the longer reports that you just referred to, we're always told, like, okay, the undercover officers have to report everything, and then somewhere else it will be decided what information is important, what's going to be thrown out, and what is not good. What the longer reports show you is that no detail is going to be thrown out. Like, all the details are being used and are sort of personal details about the state of the marriage of the Lawrences, who said what, and like, nothing is being kept out, and it's all going to the commissioner in this case.
Yeah, and more than that, that is the point. That those details are the point. That is the information they want. It's what they're interested in. It's what needs to be passed on, because this is political policing. There's no two ways about that. It's very clear that within the reporting that the Lawrences were only interested in confronting the police on political grounds, and this was the police responding on political grounds. Very clear. We've had a comment. Thanks for the comment. Thanks to everybody who comments, by the way. And please do comment. We will respond to all of it. I found this morning's hearing exhausting, and then I wasn't even there. Hn58 clearly is very reluctant to accept the reporting on justice campaigns wasn't justified because it is so erroneously wrong. Yeah, absolutely. A few people have commented how difficult it is to follow Hn58's evidence. I think it's compounded by the fact that we can't see him in person. We only just get the audio. And a number of the lawyers have even mentioned it, that they find it difficult going following proceedings.
Yeah, and also when he's pressed or when he's not sure of himself, he sort of disappears into his chair, but his voice is also going down.
We can't actually see what he's doing.
No, but you feel like that he's doing that, and his voice is going down, and he starts mumbling, and then he has a rasping voice, and Bar has been asking him to speak up several times, and then we're just shouting to the microphone. So it is indeed. For some people, it sounds like his voice is modulated, which it isn't, but still you get the impression. And you need to see, it's so much easier if you see someone, not just the body language, but also like seeing the lips and seeing the talking makes it easier to understand.
I must admit that my coverage, which I attempt to cover as much as I possibly can on Twitter live, has been more limited than it normally is. Essentially, Bar will go through a whole bunch of stuff, and there will barely be a response from Hn58. He will just go yes or I can't recall. And I'm afraid when he just can't recall anything, there's nothing really to put into a post. So I haven't been doing as much as I normally would or should, I guess. So apologies to anybody who's following via that and can't follow it very well. Thanks to everybody who's liked and shared these videos. It really does make a difference. I'm very aware that our audience is very limited. We'd like it if there was more people who are paying attention, but I mean, it is what it is. I think the topic that is being covered today is the one which, I've said this already, gave the political pressure to cause the inquiry to take place in the first place. I mean, there were lots of other issues as well, many of which we've covered in the past. But given the fact that Hn81 himself, the undercover officer, used the cover name Dave Hagen, who was deployed into the Stephen Lawrence campaign, has managed to avoid giving evidence to the inquiry, which is a ridiculous situation, quite frankly. But given that fact, this is probably the closest we'll get, both with him and also with Hn53, who will be giving evidence on Thursday and next Monday, who was the detective inspector at the time. He will be voice modulated. We won't get to see him either.
Can be worse.
So, it's really these two witnesses who give us the opportunity to, gives the inquiry the opportunity to interrogate the evidence around the infiltration of the Stephen Lawrence campaign. So I think it is very, very significant. It has huge repercussions on policing in general and race relations in Britain in general. I think the revelations we've heard over this week, though they are piecemeal and here and there, I think they should have a much wider audience. It's disappointing that there is no media coverage of these hearings. I understand that they're difficult to follow and it takes a lot.
Going on for a long time and people are tired of it, but it's still very important.
Yeah, I realize that it's difficult to kind of pick out the detail because it's so sort of far apart and you have to wait and like kind of pick different bits from different days to like kind of piece together the picture. But I think it is very significant. So thanks to everybody who liked and shared these videos. It really does help. Anything else you'd like to add about this morning's hearing?
Anyone who wants to write a report on this, we're always here to help, ready to help with filling in details and finding stuff. Please do report on it.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, there's absolutely no need to credit us. Well, certainly not me. I have no interest in being credited. If you want to just rip off the things, the insights we've given and just showcase it as your own on whatever platform you like, I'm more than happy for you to do that. So please consider doing that. All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again this